Hi, everybody. Welcome back to White Knowledge is Power, Understanding Racism in America and Why White People Should Know Black History. Today, I'm going to be talking about something called redlining. What is redlining? Well, that is a great question, and I'm going to tell you the answer. Redlining was a process where financial institutions, banks, mortgage lenders, they would take a look at a map and they would look at the neighborhoods and they would draw on the map in different colors. And there was A, B, C, and D class gradings for the neighborhoods. And for the D class neighborhoods, they would outline them in red. And as you guessed, the majority of the families that lived in these redlined D districts were Black families. If a neighborhood was primarily Black, it was deemed as a high risk investment opportunity, so you were less likely to gain a loan. This was based on pseudoscience that if a community was largely Black, that it was going to be in decline. If it already was not, that property value would go down. And this was still based on racial biases that stemmed from slavery. So what is the big deal about not being able to get a loan? Beyond the fact that it's wrong and racist to discriminate against somebody just because of the color of their skin, you could have two identical candidates with the same credit score, with the same job, same income, everything. But the white person would be more likely to get the loan as opposed to the Black person just because of the neighborhood they lived in. So that, first of all, is just wrong. Secondly, what this did was it kind of cut Black people off at the knees to be able to build wealth and build generational wealth. You know, home equity and home ownership in America is a huge way that we add value to somebody's livelihood and their income. So if you're looking to take out a loan or a mortgage for something, if you own your home, as you see on a lot of credit applications, things like that, do you own or rent your home? You can't put you own your home because you can't get a loan to purchase a home, even if you're an ideal candidate, just because of where you live, and where you live was based primarily on the color of your skin. This is literally the definition of systemic racism. This was baked in to a government sponsored program that put Black people at a disadvantage. Even though this was made illegal in 1968 due to the Fair Housing Act, if you think about it, from the 1930s to the 1960s, that's a huge gap to try to build back up to. So they're already at a disadvantage because they were prejudiced against the banks. Now, even though it's illegal, people are still operating on this system. It's still in their mind. It's still in the way they do things and their housing practices. And so it's the gap that is created. How do you bridge the gap to get them on equal footing? That's the thing about systemic racism, is that it's ingrained into the way we do things. That's why, once again, beyond it being morally abject and wrong, that's why it's such an issue, because to bridge the gap is what is extremely challenging, because you have to break down old systems. You see how hard it is to change things in laws and constitutions. So it's very disheartening. Homeownership also has benefits that you don't get if you rent your home. So homeowners get different tax deductions. It's also, I think, a stigma sometimes if you're of a certain age and you don't own your home, that you're like, oh, well, why don't you own your home? Well, for Black people, it's because, well, the system literally was built to play against me, so I couldn't own a home. The other really upsetting thing about redlining is that not only did it deem that these neighborhoods were poor investments or, you know, They thought that they would default on their loans. But because these were marked out as risky investment opportunities, hospitals, pharmacies, grocery stores, different businesses aren't going to be built there. So to have access to good schools and to hospitals and basic necessities, you'd have to travel outside of your neighborhood. And that's not fair or right. Pulitzer Prize winning investigative reporter Bill Dedman did a series of articles called The Color of Money. And what it did was he took a look at the raw data of some Atlanta banks and savings and loans institutions and laid it out how racist it was with raw data. The study showed that they would lend money to poor white communities, but they would not lend money to middle class or even affluent Black communities. It was right there in the data. And that led to a lot of laws changing and inaction of the Fair Housing Act. And, it opened up a lot of really good things for this to be moved forward in the right direction. There's still a lot of work to do because I'm sure you know in your own neighborhoods that the more rundown and poor sections of town are typically filled with primarily Black residents. And that is a generational to generational thing. They've been cut off at the knees and not given the same opportunities and advantages. And that's why systemic racism is such a big deal. And it's so hard to correct because it's what is learned. It is what is learned behavior in America. So that's what redlining is, if you ever hear that term. And it's something that still has a very felt presence in today's society. Thank you for watching. I appreciate your support. Like, comment, share if you have any questions, thoughts, feelings about redlining, how you've seen it, how it's impacted you. And let's continue to dig and educate and learn together. And most importantly, let's end racism together.